Fanfiction Reviews.
I have been reading my whole life. This isn't even an exaggeration. Even before I was able to do it for myself, my parents understood how important books were. They were both avid readers themselves, and they would read to me. And I owned a Fisher-Price cassette player on which I listened to audiobooks while finger painting or doing other things like lying in bed, telling myself the bogeyman was a product of my imagination and not about to leap out from the wardrobe and gobble me up. Growing up, I was that introverted kid who hid in the library during school lunchtime and gobbled up book after book while my peers went out into daylight that hadn't been filtered through a window first. Well, they pored over magazines discussing the latest heartthrob we were all supposed to be lusting after and ambled around the school playing field trying to get boys to notice them. I was burning up my library card through frequent use. I'm not trying to make people point and laugh at my social ineptitude. Point, laugh. I passed the point of caring about my rep years ago. Rather, I'm trying to set the scene for a frame of reference. The written word was an integral part of my life long before I had internet access and discovered fanfiction. I've been reading fanfiction for longer than I care to acknowledge sometimes. I've been reading it longer than I've been writing it, and I've been writing it for a long time. Seriously, I'm an old fart. In fandom terms, I'm in line for a Zimmer frame and an ear trumpet. In the beginning, I treated it all like I'd been treating books, reading everything I could get my hands on, no matter what the quality. I'd hunkered down in front of our family computer, housed in a converted garage that had no central heating and necessitated the wear of so many fleeces and coats that a passerby glancing in the window might have been forgiven for thinking Sasquatch was alive, living in the Midlands backwater and surfing the web. Where was I? Oh yeah, I'd be sitting in front of our PC for hours and hours, clicking away at anything and everything in whatever I was fanning over that month. The baseline quality for a printed book, however, is substantially higher than that of a fanfiction. Fanfiction at the time I discovered it had very, very, very few quality controls. Pre-readers and beta readers were rarer than cuckoo spit. So, I've read more than my fair share of bad fic. Conversely, I've also read more than my fair share of good fic, so I'm fairly well versed in spotting the tropes and pitfalls of both. What I'm getting at is that I know what I like, I know what I don't like, and while I usually try not to be too judgmental, this is a fanfic review, so judgments are going to be made. All I want people to understand is that when I make them, they're based on years and years, oh my wasted youth, of experience in and out of fandom. So I hope you can trust me in my word. Yes, these are my personal views. These are not the be-all and end-all, and there will be other people who believe different things than I do. But I'd be remiss if I didn't root them in reasons I could argue about if someone held a gun to my head. Or perhaps an evil unicorn horn.
The Fifth.
Ditzy Doo's Dismally Derpy Day by Clavdivs Caesar. Summary. A day in the life and a glimpse into the mind of Ponyville's favourite mail carrier and single mum. But if she had the choice of any one day for everyone to read about, it probably wouldn't be this one.
My thoughts.
Sometimes it's nice to read fic that makes you think. And sometimes it's nice to read fic that just hits you, like syrup hits a pile of waffles. Sweet, gooey, and impossible to get rid of once it's stuck to you. In canon and a high percentage of fanon, Derpy/Ditzy Doo is a gag character and rarely strays beyond this role. That's all well and good, but it makes things a little difficult when reading fic that tries to characterise her differently. Far more than in any other fandom I've ever been in, and I've been in quite a few, MLP fans create widely accepted fanon and stick rigidly to it, even getting aggressive with each other when someone breaks the rules. I once read a scathing rant aimed at an author who wrote a Colgate fic in which she wasn't Ponyville's dentist. Shock! Horror! It's the end of civilization as we know it! Derpy/Ditzy being such a fan favourite, this goes doubly for her. Just think how fandom reacted when the show creators did something unpopular with her character, and they have creative ownership. So, when I first started reading Ditzy Doo's Dismally Derpy Day, it was with more than a little trepidation. I like Derpy/Ditzy being a lovable bubblehead. I like having an edge of self-deprecation to her character as well. But generally the bubblehead wins out, as that was how she'd been portrayed in the vast majority of goodfic I'd encountered up until this point. Upon finishing this story, I found myself staring at the computer screen, now a laptop in a heated room, no more Sasquatch for me, and taking a little time to process the significance of what I've just read. Clavdiv Caesar, and I really hope I'm pronouncing that right, had subverted what I thought I knew, and what I thought I knew I liked, about these characters and their world, turning them on their heads until my mouth was a little "oh" of, now why didn't I think of that? Turning a background gag character into a complicated and sympathetic lead without it coming across as forced, and still acknowledging most of the widely accepted fanon about Derpy/Ditzy in a believable way. Yep, this one is something special.
The good.
On the Equestria Daily thread relating to this story, the author writes that the impetus behind it was, what if Ditzy wasn't mentally handicapped, but just kind of odd? What if she had Asperger's syndrome? I didn't know this when I was reading, but upon reflection, this makes a lot of sense. Asperger's is a kind of autism, which, for those who don't know, is a lifelong disability that affects how someone makes sense of the world, processes information, and is able to relate to others. It's often described as a spectrum disorder because it affects different people in different ways and to varying degrees. Asperger's is just one form, but it's a very specific form. It's a hidden disability, which means that you can't tell someone has it from their outward appearance, but from their behaviour and their way of thinking, which, since recognising and processing emotions and communicating with others about abstract concepts like emotions are two key points of Asperger's, can make it difficult to understand what someone with the disorder is thinking or feeling at any given moment. Until now, the only fiction book I've read that involves a lead character with Asperger's is The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime by Mark Haddon. There are others, I just haven't read them yet, although I'm told Born on a Blue Day by Daniel Tammet is very good. In The Curious Incident, Christopher, the protagonist, is a boy with very severe Asperger's. His life is dominated by the disorder's ritualistic characteristics, and so are the lives of those around him, which ultimately leads to the breakdown of his parents' marriage. Ditzy's form of Asperger's is much, much milder, yet the accuracy of its depiction, as far as I can tell, and I am by no means an expert, is still really clear. She has a perfect record for completing her mail route, to the point where even when she's severely injured, she worries about not finishing it more than about her own health. Her habit of stopping by the school to wave at Dinky every day is acknowledged by other characters as sweet, but shows the underlying pattern that Ditzy sticks to even when it makes her life difficult or is extremely inconvenient. She's doing it as much for herself as for her daughter. Ditzy has trouble reading body language and understanding subtext, which is played for laughs a little at the end, but displays a more poignant side to her character too. Her difficulty in this area is offset by her talent for controlling even the smallest of air currents. Her attention to detail and inability to understand how other Pegasi can't do this perfectly is integrating a characteristic of Asperger's into the pony fantasy setting, with a believability that gets more striking the more you think about it. One of the problems I have with a lot of pony fanfiction is trying to transplant real-world problems into the pony setting, and it ends up just coming off as false and hollow and not at all believable or enjoyable or anything that makes me want to click further or scroll down the screen anymore. Ditzy is not portrayed as a mouthpiece for those with Asperger's, and the disorder is not the main character here. I might have over-egged the pudding a little bit, but the story is not actually about Asperger's. It's a slice of life about a character who happens to have the disorder, which even professional authors have trouble pulling off. Ditzy is not her disorder. She has a personality outside her problems, and that shines through like syrup in sunlight as it heads for the waffle pile. I love this. I love that Ditzy gets to be herself, and everything we know about her so far, in canon and fanon, with a little bit extra on top.
The bad.
If I had to pick one aspect that didn't ring as true, it would be the two bullies, Sticks and Stones. I have nothing against OCs, but like a lot of fandom, any fandom, I judge OCs in fanfic by a different set of criteria than I do portrayals of canon cast members, even the background ponies. OCs have an uphill struggle to fit into a world not their own, and must do so in front of an audience primed not to accept them. What is this non-canon thing? Smite it! Smite the interloper! For that reason, Sticks and Stones came off a little bit too much like what they were, plot devices. I would have liked to see them expanded on a bit more, especially since we're told they bully their brothers, Snips and Snails, just as much as they do Ditzy, making them, wait for it, one-trick ponies. Just a line giving the characters something else to define them would have been nice. This might be a bit rich when talking about a show that has done exactly the same thing with a trio of Pegasi bullies, but, as I said, canon characters and own characters are judged differently, and canon can already get away with a lot more than fanfic can in this particular area.
Final verdict.
Read it. Even if you, like me, like reading about Derpy/Ditzy as a cute little bubblehead, read it and take a look at the widely accepted characterizations fandom has bestowed on this particular little grey pony from a different perspective. I haven't talked much about Big Macintosh's role, but he, too, is well drawn by the author, and his thread of the story has subtlety in all the right places, with an open ending that feels right for these two. Maybe after reading, you, like me, will come away from it with that syrup on waffles feeling in your heart, and a whole bunch of new ideas in your head. There is a sequel, which I haven't read yet, but if it's anything like as well written as this fic, then that's sure to be a cracking read too.